Hello everyone. Today I will be ranking all of the Legend of Zelda video games. This counts the spin-offs and every main series game and remake. If you watched any of my videos before, you might notice I have a new name. I'm still working on that. Might not be final. Any suggestions would work as well. I'm trying to focus on more Nintendo related content because I think that's where I flourish the most and what I have the most passion about, especially the Zelda series. So I figured I'd start that off by doing a Zelda themed video. Before we start, obviously, this is all just my personal opinion. With these games, other than really the first two, there really is no bad game in the series. So it's kind of up to the player, really, on what they think is the best one. So that makes really almost any ranking valid. But I have my personal ranking, and I will be showing that. The only game on this list I have not played is Cadence of Hyrule. I've never played that one, so that one will not be ranked, although it looks very good. I'm excited to play that at some point. And the other thing is, because of how good the series is, a lower ranking on here doesn't necessarily mean I think it's a bad game. It's more in the context of the series itself. Like, a mid-Zelda game is better than most games still. So other than, again, really the first two, which we'll get to, I think they're all very good. So, starting it off, I found this online, and it's in a very weird order. I don't really know why it's in this order, but we're gonna go with it. I'm gonna start from the top. So the first one is Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity. I was a big fan of the first Hyrule Warriors game. I really liked it. I liked the crossover element. I think a spin-off like that is when you can kind of have fun, have all the different characters, have a crazy story. So then when they revealed they were doing the same gameplay, but with the Breath of the Wild art style, which we'll get to next, I wasn't the happiest about it, because honestly, that style has gotten a little old, that story, those characters, in my opinion, personally. So I wasn't the most excited, but I was still happy to play it. And then you get it, and the performance, the frame rate, I know it's on the Switch, but oh my god, it's really bad. When it's working well, it's a fun, very good game. No major problems with a good story. But with the problems with performance, along with the kind of overuse of the Breath of the Wild era story, in my opinion, I don't think it was necessary. I think Hyrule Warriors was a good time to explore other stuff in the series that wouldn't really get explored in the main game. I'm gonna have to put it at C. And I'm actually going to add a row below. I'm going to add an E tier. But because I don't think it should be second to last, I think it's a very middle ground game. And I think that's just the best place to put it. Alright, Breath of the Wild. Now, I'll put Tears of the Kingdom up here too, because I want to do them side by side. Now, objectively, Tears of the Kingdom is probably the better game. There's more story, there's more quests, there's more stuff to do, there's more places to explore, all of that. But Tears of the Kingdom, I just never really got into. I loved Breath of the Wild, I played it for hundreds of hours, and I was so burnt out of that style, I did not want Breath of the Wild 2, personally. I know a lot of people did, and I totally understand that. I was kind of done with it. And so it came out, and I played it, and it's good. There's nothing objectively, although the additions it makes to the story and to the timeline are obviously very controversial, because it's kind of almost a retcon. And I don't really know how I feel about that personally. I didn't really like it the most. And I was kind of really tired of this art style by then. Breath of the Wild was, after Skyward Sword, you could really tell that the series formula was starting to run its course. making the same type of game over and over again. It was starting to get old, and so Breath of the Wild was very much a needed fresh breath of air, no pun intended, and I think they worked really well. Personally, I really liked it. If this was the only game like this on its own, I would probably look back on it better, but even then, honestly, I would probably put it in S tier. It's a really good game. I think it's a little overrated, but even then, I mean, it's definitely flawed. It's a flawed masterpiece is what I would call it. I mean, the side quests are almost non-existent, and sometimes there's just not as much to do later in the game. I think the whole shrine thing at first is pretty novel, but the fact that they all have the same kind of look and feel, like if they were truly mini dungeons that each had their own like differences like in a normal Zelda game, instead of all being the same style, I think that would have helped the game a lot. Honestly, I think I'll put it, and it's a very high A tier. It's probably going to be the highest A tier. Very good game. But yeah. And Tears of the Kingdom, while being objectively probably the better game, I have a hard time putting above Breath of the Wild just because of some of my issues with it. My issue more with the game's existence than with the game itself. I mean, it's a very pretty game. It works well. It runs about as good as Breath of the Wild, maybe a little worse. When you're in the depths and there's like lots of fire effects and stuff, and sometimes the Ultra Hand, and that's the other thing, the whole Ultra Hand ability type thingy was not really my thing. I know some people like that. It just didn't really feel right, but I think that's more of a personal thing than an actual game design flaw, so I'm not gonna dock points on it for that. I know some people would say these are easy S tiers. Personally, no, but I also think they're a little, Tears of the Kingdom especially is a little overhated. Some people saying it's terrible, and like, no, you don't have to like what it does. I don't. But that doesn't mean it's a bad game. Coming up next, A Link to the Past and Four Swords. Okay, A Link to the Past Normal is there. I have played the GBA version. I think the Four Swords portion alone is a very nice addition. I know there are small changes to the game, but like overall it's basically the same game. Link to the Past, it's not really a remake, it's not really a redo. There are small changes, but nothing major. I know the sprite art's a little different, obviously, a little more zoomed in, a la Super Mario Deluxe on the Game Boy, but overall about the same game. So I'm kind of gonna do these together. A Link to the Past is a very important game of the series, and as you'll realize with my rankings, I am not the biggest 2D Zelda guy. There are a couple I've played that I really like, and most of them though, they're not my thing. I can respect them for what they are as games, but the actual gameplay really isn't my thing. A Link to the Past, the music and the story especially are really good. I love what this game did for the series, really setting the tone for where the series would go in the future, but on its own, as a gameplay experience, I probably wouldn't put it in that S tier range, personally. But I think it is arguably the most important game for the series besides Ocarina of Time, which we'll get to. So I think it is important to look back on it for that. And if you're a 2D Zelda fan, then there's no reason that wouldn't be an S tier, I don't think. It's a great game. Amazing game. Next up, because we're not doing Cadence of Hyrule, we have Four Swords Adventures. Now, I think this game's a little underrated. I really like the art style of kind of using a Minish Cap style 2D sprite of Toon Link, while also using like the more Wind Waker 3D effects of like the explosions and certain on-screen effects. It's a really good combination of sprite art and animation art. And that's something I think really needs to be back. It almost reminds me of like the HD 2D or the 2.5D kind of style you see in games like Octopath Traveler now. Obviously it's not the same, but I think it's like almost a precursor to that. And I really think a full game in this style that isn't a gimmick game would be really good. Now, with that being said, the Four Swords gameplay, the 4-person gameplay, honestly, it's pretty novel. It's fun. I have no real qualms with this game. It's not like some crazy masterpiece with an insane story that's going to grip you or anything like that, but it's a pretty good time. And I think it's a little underrated in that sense. I will put it in B tier. Next up, the original Hyrule Warriors. I guess not the original because it's the definitive edition. I played this on the 3DS. I'm a 3DS, big 3DS person, and that's where I played this first. I really enjoyed it. I had a lot of fun. I didn't think I would like the whole Dynasty Warriors style gameplay, but honestly, I really like it. It was one of my favorite Zelda games that I had played at the time. Obviously now that I've played all of them, I realize it's not like that good, but I think what it does and all the crossovers and stuff, I think it's a really fun time. I'm going to put this in, I'll put it in B tier. I think putting that in the same one as Breath of the Wild and A Link to the Past is it'd be a little disingenuous. Yeah, I think that's a good spot. Honestly, I might move Hyrule Warriors. Yeah, I'll keep it there for now. We'll see. Next up, A Link Between Worlds. This game is a half remake, half spiritual successor to A Link to the Past, releasing on the 3DS. I love this game. This is my favorite 2D Zelda by far. I think the art style, the gameplay, the story, everything, it takes a lot of the good stuff from A Link to the Past, adds a bunch of new cool ideas, modern Zelda ideas, and packages up in a very quick and fun experience. I find sometimes 2D Zelda is a little slow and overbearing. Pacing of this game is phenomenal. I really have no issues with this game. I think this is one of the best Zelda games ever. This is a pretty easy S tier for me, personally. I think anybody who hasn't given this game a shot yet really should. It is a beautiful, beautiful game. Music, gameplay, story, all in one. Honestly, I don't know what else to say. It's a great game, and that is an S tier for me. Now, Link's Awakening DX. This is the Game Boy Color version, released after the Game Boy version. Updates some sprites a little bit, adds color, adds some extra content. Link's Awakening is a very good game that I think is held back by its existence on the Game Boy, hence why we got the remake, which we'll get to. I think the story and ideas presented in Link's Awakening are amazing, but because of the hardware limitations, it's kind of a pain in the ass to play. The constant switching to the weapons menu, because you only have 2 face buttons, really drags on the gameplay and turns what could be a much quicker game and adds a couple hours, sometimes 10 hours, of just switching items, because you have to do it constantly and it's very slow. And those are some problems that are fixed in the remake. I think the core ideas of this game are amazing, but it was in dire need of a remake, so I will put this in B tier. Now, Link's Awakening, the remake, it still has its own issues. I think the Dungeon Maker mode, while it being an extra thing, so it didn't need to be anything amazing, really could have been a lot better. The performance issues are really perplexing. I don't fully understand why this game wasn't optimized better. It is a very beautiful art style, though. It feels very similar to the A Link Between Worlds art style, but a little more chibi, a little more plasticky, which I think fits the vibe of this not being real, it's a dream. I think that works very well. Overall, I think the improvements to the gameplay, the added weapon slots so you don't have to switch as often, I think all the improvements, along with the revamped music. I will say the problem with the music, I don't think it did the original Game Boy music justice. I think the ideas presented in the Game Boy music are great, and they didn't really change them at all or like improve them. just kind of did the same thing. So I feel like that was a little underwhelming. But overall, I think it's a great game. I love the story. I love the animated cutscene at the beginning. We need a whole show like that. Oh my god, it's beautiful. And I will put this in A tier. I personally would put this above A Link to the Past. I know Link to the Past has its purist. Not everyone is going to like that. That's just me personally. Link's crossbow training. This is a dumb, fun, mindless game, way too quick, but it's a pack-in with the Wii Zapper. Not much to really talk about. I mean, it's fine, but like, come on. It's cool. That's about all I have to say. Ooh, here is where things get a little complicated. This will be interesting, to say the least. So we're at Majora's Mask and Majora's Mask 3D. I think the overall story and ideas in this game is so good, and yet, even with a remake, there is really no perfect version of this game. Both games have their major downsides and flaws, and so it's really hard to fully appreciate what this has to offer. Personally, I would still take the 3DS version over the N64 version. I know not everyone would agree with that, and I understand that. The 3DS version is far from perfect, but personally, I value the ease of play over everything else. When it comes to a remake, those are the first things, quality of life are the first things that should be changed, and those were changed. Just not everything was changed for the better. I think the story, and the music, oh my god, the music. The sense of dread that you get in the last couple hours with the soundtrack is something that I feel like has never truly been replicated in gaming history and may never be replicated. It is so beautiful. All the music in this game is haunting. The overall vibe of this game is just dark and scared, but there is some, light to it, making it a really impactful story and game. The characters are some of the best in the story, in the entire series, I mean. Some of my problems with the game are Majora is not really featured as a main villain in the way any other Zelda game does. I feel like he kind of takes a backseat to the overall impending idea of the moon, and while I think it's kind of cool, at the same time I wish he was a little more fleshed out as a villain, even just with like the Skull Kid and stuff. I think the 3D mechanic, while extremely novel and obviously a way to combat the insane deadline that they were given with this game after Ocarina of Time, can be a bit annoying. That's why I like the Song of Double Time and Song of Slow Time in the 3DS. It works way better, but I think while it's very novel, personally I would just prefer a normal Zelda game over that. I think this has a lot going for it and a lot taking away from it. I would put Majora's Mask 3D in an A tier and put Majora's Mask N64 in a lower A tier. I know not everyone's gonna. I totally understand the people that love Majora's Mask. Wasn't my thing as much as others, but I still think it's a beautiful, amazing game. Remember, I love all these games. Even Link's Crossbow Training. These are all amazing games, and these are all being compared to each other in the main gaming landscape. This is still one of the greatest games of all time. So take that with a grain of salt. Me not putting it in S tier. And remember, that's just my opinion. I totally understand the people that love Majora's Mask. There's so much going for it. And yeah. Next up, Legend of Zelda: The Minish Cap. This is probably my second favorite 2D game. I have a lot I like about this game. I think it's a little slow-paced at sometimes, and that can kind of be its downfall. But I think overall it's a very enjoyable game. I love the art style. I like how it kind of uses the Toon Link style while also adding some new stuff. I like your companion in this game. I feel like Zelda game companions are really hit or miss. Either they really improve the game, a la Midna, or can really take it down like Fi. So I think in this game, it's kind of in the middle for once, and that's okay. The companion doesn't always need to be front and center constantly, you know? And yeah, I think Vati being the villain is a breath of fresh air, even if it's not fully fleshed out like I wish it would be. I really don't have many problems with this game. The music is good, but in a series full of masterpiece soundtracks, it's a little forgettable. Overall, though, great game, a lot going for it. I would have to give this probably a high B tier. Now this is the big one. Ocarina of Time and Ocarina of Time 3D. I'm going to immediately get this off my chest. Anybody who says the N64 version is the best version of this game is lying to themselves. I am sorry. There is no reason to play Ocarina of Time on N64. The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time 3D is the best version in every way, shape, and form. They even decided to leave over some of the speedrunning glitches. It's like the perfect remake. The N64 version is incredibly flawed. One of the greatest stories of all time, one of the most impactful games of all time, but I think it really aged terribly. And I think a lot of that is fixed in the 3DS version. Now, I have a little bit of bias. The Ocarina of Time 3D was my first Zelda game, and it's what made me really like Zelda so much. This is arguably my favorite game of all time. And I know, Ocarina of Time is one of the best games. I know that's really basic. Now, with that being said, the N64 version is borderline unplayable. 20 frames per second, a ton of glitches and bugs. The graphics, obviously, are on N64, and we're early N64 at that. I've completed it on N64, but it wasn't very fun. I think the fact that the N64 version is the highest rated game of all time on Metacritic, and the 3DS version is like 10 points below it or whatever, is a travesty. If anything, this should be the highest rated game of all time. Genuinely, I would put the N64 version of Ocarina of Time in B tier. I think it's that big of a difference. It is night and day, because I think the ideas, the music, the design, the story, everything is so good, but it's held back, and I think it really shines in the 3DS version. Things like the Forest Temple are some of the best locations, best music in like all of gaming history, and they can truly be appreciated in this version. I heavily agree that there's that big of a difference between the two. But yeah, that is possibly my favorite game of all time. There's part of the reason I'm not going too in-depth for each one is a lot of these I would probably plan on making separate videos for in the future. This one definitely. So I will leave it at that for now. Next up, we have the Oracle games. And honestly, I know they're two different games. I have played both games. They're not bad at all, but they are arguably the most forgettable games in the franchise besides the DS ones. Even now, having played them, I'm kind of like painstakingly trying to remember anything like memorable about these games other than the way they interact, which even then was like barely anything. I think they're fine games. They have cool stories. I like that they're set away from Hyrule. I think that was the necessary way to do it. There's just not much going on. Personally, I would put them in high C tier. I don't think they're bad games, but I don't think they're that great. Next up, we have Legends of Zelda Phantom Hourglass. I feel like this game is incredibly flawed. It has some things going for it. I think the touchscreen control system is terrible. Should have never ever done that. You cover half the screen with your hand anyway, and it looks terrible. All they needed was to do D-pad controls and I think these would have been amazing games. I think this game is hurt by it more. I would put this game in a C tier, plus the Temple of the Ocean King having to go there so many times is just bad game design. It was lazy and it was never good. I'm sorry. I think there's some good story in this game. The character development is very good. But that's about all I can say for it. The actual gameplay, which the Zelda franchise loves to be gameplay first, is just not there. And I would like to add with Spirit Tracks, I have similar ideas, but I think this one with the train and everything like that, it's so out there. I think it works, and I think it is very novel, and I can at least give it points for trying something different. And I think some of the gameplay issues are remedied as well, while still being a very good story, honestly. I would put that in a low B tier. Now, I'm going to... Wait a second. I just realized the original Zelda is not on here. Wow. Okay, well, we'll do that last, I guess. I just realized that. Wow, that's terrible. I want to do this one first, because then we got this gauntlet of games. And then I'll talk about the first two games last. Triforce Heroes is probably the most nothing game in Zelda history besides Link's crossbow training. I like the outfits. I think that's cute. I think it's fun. But it's nothing more than that, and the multiplayer gameplay can sometimes genuinely be kind of frustrating. I don't think they put much time into this game. I don't think they needed to, but like, yeah, it's fine, but like, it's probably the worst modern game in the series. I would put that in a lowest C tier. Now, Skyward Sword for the Wii and for the Switch, I have two differing opinions on. Now, not much of the game has changed between the two versions, but the controls being changed is a huge difference. Playing the Wii version now, especially now that the Wii hardware is a little old, the Wii remotes don't work as well as they used to, which they already didn't work the greatest, honestly. It's just... yeah, it doesn't work very well. And because of that, honestly, I didn't really like it when I first played it on the Wii. But I'll get into why I do like it now on the other one, so I'll talk more about it there. I would put it right there. Now, the Switch game, I didn't think it would be that much of a difference. It's like, okay, nice, you can use the stick. Oh well. I still have issues with the game, but this was very eye-opening. It allowed me to enjoy a lot of Skyward Sword's strengths as games, and I think really helped me to realize it's not that bad of a game. I did not like it at first, but I appreciate Skyward Sword. I think it still has its flaws. The pacing is bad. The overall formula isn't really working here, but I think the story and characters are some of the best in the series. The Zelda in this game, amazing. Girahim, one of the coolest enemies, antagonists in the entire series. Demise is awesome. I like the way that they try, personally, I know not everyone liked this, I like that they try to explain how the series works with the whole reincarnation thing. I like that, not everyone does. With the added controls making everything so much easier, so much more enjoyable. Personally, I would put this in a low A tier, mid A tier. I think it's a very good game. Now, Twilight Princess, I will be talking about the HD version on the Wii U. There's not that much difference between, other than controls and looking a little better, so like, and I don't think it makes as big of a difference, but you might as well, and there's not two different ones. So, immediately, I'm just going to put it up there. I like this game more, but objectively, I think Twilight Princess is the best game in the series. The story, the characters, the music, everything just comes together to make the most epic journey, an adventure, really possible. And I think that's the very nature of what a Zelda game should be. I think that the art direction, not everyone likes it. Some people say it doesn't age well. I think it is perfect for this game. The dark, gritty tone perfectly suits this adventure where it really, everything feels like it's amped up. It feels like a souped up version of Ocarina of Time. This game is what Ocarina of Time wanted to be, and they were able to do it. I love the Twilight, the whole story with Zant and Midna. Midna is one of the best characters ever. I think this version of Link is one of the most interesting versions with the relationships he has with the village children that he kind of mentors. I think his relationship with Midna is beautiful. The overall includence of the Kingdom of Hyrule with Princess Zelda, with the guards, I think is really one of the few games besides the Breath of the Wild games that really make Hyrule feel like an operating kingdom. Like, there's people here, there's guards, there's a military, and they got taken over. I think Ganondorf's inclusion is amazing. He looks so cool. His boss fight is awesome. And then, of course, the music. I mean, I think the Hyrule Field music, oh, it's so good. Midna's Lament is one of the most beautiful songs of all time. There are no bad tracks. And then you can talk about the dungeons. I mean, there is no bad dungeon in the game. The Arbiter's Grounds especially, amazing. I think really, once you gain the ability to transform between Wolf Link and normal Link, once that opens up, all of the dungeons after that are the best in the series. I mean, you got Snow Peak, you got Arbiter's Grounds, you have City in the Sky. I think they're all just magnificent, and even the ones before that are all amazing. The stories and characters are so good. I really have no complaints with these games. The only reason I personally like Ocarina of Time more is nostalgia value, but this game is basically better in about every way, and I think I would be remiss to not call this one of the best games of all time. And next, of course, the Wind Waker HD, which honestly had more changes, so probably should have been two separate ones, but oh well. So I'll be talking about the HD version. I know some people love Wind Waker, I know some people hate it. I like it. I don't think it is the best Zelda game as some other people do, but I think there's a lot going for it. I don't hate the art style, I don't love it, I think it works. It works for the game. I could not imagine this game with any other art style. Same goes for Twilight Princess. I prefer the Twilight Princess style better, but I love this game. I think the music and the story are great. The expressiveness of the characters and the art style works so well for this style of game. I think what it does for the story of the franchise is amazing. The gameplay is really fun. The sword combat, it's a lot more all over the place than the more refined combat of Twilight Princess, but I think that really fits the style of game. In the HD version, things like the Swift Sail and the changed Triforce Quest really improve the pacing of this game. There's still some issues with it, but honestly, I think it is an amazing game. I have no real complaints about it with the Wii U version, other than the bloom is set a little too high, but oh well. That's more of an artistic thing. I still think it looks so beautiful though. And yeah, I would put this in a low S tier. Now, the last two games. These are going to go together in E tier, but I want to talk about them because I think they're two very different games. I think the first Legend of Zelda game is just borderline unplayable today. I mean, the mysteriousness of like what to do and where to go, I just don't think was very good. The music was basic, albeit iconic. The graphics are early NES graphics. What are you gonna do? I think the fact that the game is so skull-crushingly hard, yet the bosses die in a couple hits, is really odd. And I just think overall, there's just not much to it. Not much story, not much really anything to be held. I think Adventure of Link, although I don't think the 2D gameplay, the side-scrolling, really works well. It works for what it is, I just don't like it very much. I think the music, though, is what saves Adventure of Link and why I would put it ahead of Zelda 1. I think some of the most iconic themes, at least which they should be, are in this game. And I think anybody who doesn't realize that needs to listen to it, because you're in for some great tracks. Otherwise, though, yeah, it's poorly made, lots of errors, lots of mistakes left in. Yeah, they're both pretty rough. The difference between A Link to the Past and these two are huge. And yeah, that is where my overall Zelda ranking stands personally. I will leave it at that. Remember to like and subscribe. Thank you so much for watching. I want to, continue improving the quality of my videos and my editing, and hopefully get everything better with every upload. If you have anything you want to see, any video ideas, anything you want me to talk about more, any other series you want me to talk about more, just let me know in the comments, and thank you so much for watching.